Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have a just splendid show for you today, of course.
As
it
always.
Is Tuesday morning, yes, and I'm excited about it, aren't you?
Me too. I'm always excited to be here with you in D.C. from Denver. So tell me, what's on your radar?
Okay, let's do it. Well, when it comes to the conflict between Israel and Iran, the U.S. government and President Donald Trump, most of all, needs to listen to America First conservatives who know that the people of the U.S. do not want our country involved in another regime change war. In fact, I can't say it any better than Tucker Carlson, who was on Steve Bannon's podcast yesterday to urge Trump to let cooler heads prevail. Importantly, Tucker emphasized that this is not about being anti-Israel. It's not anti-Israel at all to want to engage in diplomacy with Iran rather than warfare. Watch this.
If you think I'm anti-Israel, man, you have lost the plot, son. If you think I'm your enemy, not at all. I like Israel. Are you kidding? I've spent a lot of time there. I continue to like it. I pray that Jerusalem is not damaged. I feel so sad for the Israelis who've been killed in the last couple of days and the Iranians who've been killed in the last couple of days, who had nothing to do with any of this.
Tucker continues.
But the point is, if you think that saying, hey, let's focus on my country where I was born, where my family's been for hundreds of years, that was the promise of the last election, please do it. If you think that's hate, you know, you've really lost perspective, I guess is what I would.
Tucker went on to say that while he loves Trump, he is really worried that if Israel drags the U.S. into its war, Trump's entire agenda could be derailed. I actually really love Trump, says Tucker. I think he's a deeply humane, kind person, but I'm really afraid my country is going to be further weakened by this. I think we're going to see the end of the American empire, end quote. Tucker then criticized the neocons and nation builders in the Republican Party who are pushing the U.S. toward war. He called them out by name, Mark Levin, Sean Hannity, and others who do not have the best interests of the MAGA movement and the Trump agenda, let alone the nation, in mind. Meanwhile, Iranian officials are signaling behind closed doors that they are open to more dialogue with the U.S. about nuclear proliferation if the U.S. does not join Israel's war effort. Now, that's according to reporting in the Wall Street Journal and elsewhere. An Arab official told the Journal that the Iranians know the U.S. is supporting Israel in its defense, and they are sure the U.S. is supporting Israel logistically, but they want guarantees the U.S. won't attack or won't join the attacks. That's all we have to do. Stay out of the conflict involving two other foreign nations and engage in diplomacy. Seems like a no-brainer. Yet too many people are succumbing to magical thinking about regime change. They believe that if the U.S. helps Israel launch further attacks on Iran, the regime will crumble. Netanyahu has even suggested that Israel might target the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. Trump has reportedly nixed that idea so far, thank goodness. Look, how many times must we learn this lesson? Overthrowing and killing the bad guys in the Middle East, that's the easy part. Replacing them with people who aren't even worse is hard. We learned this in Iraq. We learned it in Libya. Afghanistan was a disaster. Syria is so far so good, although the new leadership was formerly allied with ISIS and has indeed murdered dissidents all over the country. Keep in mind that the U.S. did not get overly involved in the Syrian revolution either, except by providing economic pressure in the form of sanctions. If anyone thinks that the U.S.-backed assassination of the Iranian supreme leader was going to lead to the creation of a pro-Western, secular, liberal democracy, I would ask you to have your head examined. Unfortunately, that ridiculous notion is believed by the bipartisan foreign policy establishment, the so-called experts in both parties, the people who brought you the Iraq war disaster. They are putting tremendous pressure on Trump to fall in line, do what they say, even though they've been proven wrong time and time again. Now we will see if Trump holds the line. There's another dimension to this, Lindsay, that is emerging. I saw Representative Thomas Massie tweeting about this. You know, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, and I bring this point up frequently, and it's just often ignored. The President of the United States cannot unilaterally go to war with a country. It is, in fact, Congress's responsibility to declare war. So if war with Iran is such a good idea, let it be debated and discussed in Congress, and Congress can vote to declare war on Iran, and then we can join Israel in its efforts if that's what our elected representatives think is wise. I don't think that's the right course of action, but if we're going to do that, it must be done properly, according to our Constitution. The president, not just Trump, any president cannot unilaterally take us to war without congressional oversight and approval. It just is not the case. It has to be that way. So I hope, as we're inching closer to conflict, and Trump seems more and more willing to go along and get involved. I hope the role of Congress is not forgotten. I saw Thomas Massey making that point, and AOC, one of the most far right and far left people, agreeing that Congress must assert itself here.
We don't need another war. There are very obvious diplomatic off-ramps right now on the table, but continuing the strikes is going to kind of slam that option because Iran has a firm stance that if you keep bombing us and we keep being in the middle of what is looking like a war, we're not going to continue to negotiate. But they have voiced, even as recent as yesterday, that they would like to continue speaking, just like they wanted to continue speaking 2 days ago on Sunday before they were attacked on Thursday. That was the plan. And sometimes these talks take longer than we'd like. Now, I hear a lot of people on the right who are in favor of going to war with Iran saying that, this is the time to strike. Iran is the weakest it's ever been. And there's a whole conversation about that perspective. But I don't think it's in our best interest. When we look at what Israel has done so far, they didn't even attack or affect the nuclear facilities, which is the main goal that they're going after. So killing the supreme leader, assassination will only start a new war. It's certainly not going to end one. I think it's going to fire up, and not that they have the manpower to beat the U.S., but it's like, why would we want to engage with a country that's allied with China and Russia when we obviously are talking about the same thing in Russia right now, not wanting to engage with them in that way? So why would we engage with one of their allies this way? I think there's better diplomatic ways to solve this. I also know that 224 people in Iran have already been killed. 24 Israelis have already been killed, and 600 have already been injured. So the number has probably skyrocketed by the time that you're or anyone at home is watching this. It's past that. And so I just want to know what is on the line. If civilians don't want this, then why are people doing this? I also think, Trump has to be careful about the mixed messaging, because when diplomacy is put out there by another country, there's Oman, Qatar, they're all asking for, a peaceful resolution to figure out how to continue to have talks. And Trump is saying, yeah, that's a good idea, and saying some of that. But then he's at G7 yesterday, and he's refusing to sign a de-escalation agreement that the rest of the countries there were asking him to sign. And so that would be a very obvious stance to say, of course, Israel's our ally. Of course, we support Israel, but we don't think this is a good idea. And like Trump is the poster child for being allowed to disagree with other leaders, even within his own party. He does that very publicly. So I don't know why we're tiptoeing around something that he even campaigned on not being a good idea.
I agree fully. I think that people are, again, duping themselves into a kind of, they'll greet us as liberators mindset. The regime is ready to fall. That might be the case, that the regime is ready to fall. I can't tell. But who knows that it's going to be replaced by something that's better. That has been our experience in the Middle East, is replacing bad regimes with worse regimes. Now, maybe you can say you can't do worse than what they have. I guess that could be possible, but these authoritarians, these extremists, have proven to be more stable in this part of the world than we would like or expect, and I just don't know how many more times we need to learn this lesson. It seems like the same people who got Iraq so wrong are painting the exact same portrait of the situation in Iran, and with no acknowledgement that they were catastrophically wrong the last time. And I don't trust them. I don't know what credibility they have to assert that it is a good idea to start, indiscriminately bombing Iran, hoping to topple the regime, and that somehow we're going to come out ahead in all this. I just don't find that very plausible, and I think diplomacy is an avenue we have not yet exhausted and should resume.
We're going to be talking about this a lot more. Trump is suggesting that the G7 welcome back Russia into the fold, the pushback he's getting from his own party. Up next.
group of 7 could become the group of 8 or even 9 if Trump has anything to say about it. The president suggested yesterday at the G7 summit that Russia and China should be part of the organization. Take a listen.
If somebody wants to suggest China coming in, I think we suggest, but you want to have people that you can talk to. You know, they don't talk. Putin speaks to me. He doesn't speak to anybody else. He doesn't want to talk because he was very insulted when he got thrown out of the G8, as I would be, as you would be, as anybody would be. He was very insulted. And, I mean, he was thrown out by Trudeau, who convinced 1 or 2 people, along with Obama. If he were a member of what was called the G8 at that time, it was always the G8, you wouldn't have a war right now.
Now, many online pointed out that Trudeau was not actually prime minister when Russia was kicked out of the G8.
Several journalists also highlighting that the decision by the group to remove Russia was precisely because of an attack on Ukraine. LA Times columnist Jackie Calms posting on X, quote, Trump again embarrasses himself and the U.S. on the world stage. He either doesn't know or doesn't care that Russia was thrown out of the G8 in 2014 after it forcibly annexed Ukraine's Crimea, violating a 1994 accord among Russia, the U.S., and UK to guarantee Ukraine's security.
Some in Trump's party are not on board with bringing Putin back into the group. Nebraska Republican Congressman Don Bacon wrote, keep the G7, not the G8. Russia should not be part of this forum until it stops its invasion of Ukraine and pulls out of areas it occupies. War criminal Putin deserves to be ostracized. But look, my response to this idea, this notion, but that ostracism doesn't work. It's like, oh, we kicked him out to punish him, and then he invaded Ukraine anyway.
Okay,
so
having
how
him
does
in
that a
doesn't
good
work
idea?
because he invaded Crimea and annexed it in 2014 when he was in it. That's why they kicked him out. So both don't work.
Well, now he's invaded the whole country.
Well, both don't work. So that's, the argument is not works much better. I think that there was a message. This wasn't just symbolic. It's saying like coercion and territorial conquests are not allowed in this conversation. And so that was a lesson for you. Trump said he was offended. Well, you should be offended. You're offending the rest of the country by violating agreements that you had with the UK and US. And again, the message worldwide is that the US, the UK, and other leaders do not allow dictators to just run rampant and do whatever they want. And that's why there's sanctions by other countries and pushback. And so maybe having him in didn't change
they are
anything.
doing whatever they want.
I know, but he was doing whatever he wanted in 2014.
Maybe we've
That's
had
why they
enough
kicked him out.
stick and we should try out a little bit of carrot. What if this is just, coming up with ideas here. What if we offer him membership in what would then be the G8 in exchange for doing peace negotiations with Ukraine?
Well, at the time when he was kicked out, leaders in Russia were like, we don't care. I'm summing up and paraphrasing, but they were like, "What? We don't care if we're kicked out of this." So I don't know that offering him this membership back is going to change anything.
Wouldn't it be
I
better
also think
if
it sends a
Putin
bigger
talked to
message
the
that
other
we
leaders of
are
Europe?
legitimizing authoritarianism.
No, we're
Yes,
not.
we are.
No.
If we add China and Russia back into this
We
conversation,
can't pretend they don't exist. We can't put our hands over our ears and say, there's no such thing as Russia and China. We hate them so much. It's not doing anything.
yeah, but we can't also say you're welcome back. This is the perfect time while you're doing committing more crimes. Please come on back.
I think they're going to be committing more crimes regardless, but I think if world leaders are talking to each other, it is more likely that tensions will de-escalate. I think if they're not talking to each other or they're only talking to Trump, that's good for us, good for Trump, but I don't think that's good for their countries.
Well, now Trump had several now, at this point, 3 different phone calls with Russia and, hasn't really made mountains move. And so, even if he was in G7, I'm not sure that anything else would change. And so that Trump is always making big statements and big promises. If he has the keys and he is the great negotiator, right, that many people in MAGA believe he is, then he should be able to get this deal done without the rest of the 6 people in the G7, right, the 6 leaders. He doesn't need them. He is the greatest negotiator of our time, right?
It would be good for stability in Europe if the leaders of Europe and Putin were able to talk to each other. I think that it's just obvious to me that would be no worse than the situation we're in now, and it might be better. You're right. It could be the case that there's nothing anyone can do to, at this point, talk Putin out of conquering all of Ukraine because it's gotten to this stage. That's why I advocated diplomacy between the 2 nations before it got to this stage. Under the Biden administration, which did not have that view, had the view that Ukraine could somehow defeat Russia and we should keep arming them and keep supplying them and keep encouraging them to do that. Boris Johnson, a former Prime Minister of the UK, he's the one who really encouraged Zelensky to go for fight them. Don't do diplomacy. You should fight them. We see how that turned out. Not great. Maybe if the leader of the UK and the leader of Russia were having dialogue, that wouldn't have taken place because it really to my mind, doomed Ukraine. Now we're in a situation where perhaps not even Trump, the world's greatest negotiator and deal maker, there might be no deal he can offer that is more appealing to Putin than just taking the whole country. That is an unfortunate reality we're in.
It's not about personal relationships. It's about global rules, and Russia is breaking them. They were in 2014, and they are now. And so kicking them out is like rules are for so we shouldn't have any rules. We should just let everybody do whatever they want.
But we don't,
because that's basically if Ukraine accepts Russia's terms, we are telling all dictators, have carte blanche, do whatever you like, carry on.
We overthrew. The reason we're in this situation with Iran is because decades ago we overthrew their government to reestablish. We overthrew their democratically elected government to put the Shah of Iran in power, and that led eventually to the Islamic Revolution, where now we have Islamic extremists who run the country. Like, we're not, we've meddled, we've overthrown governments we didn't like, we do bad stuff. Like we're perfect, and I don't like the leftist view that America is the most evil, country on earth, and our government is evil, and we've never done anything right, and everyone else is so wonderful. It's a messy world, and we've done some sketchy stuff, and so have they, and I think that should be the understanding.
I think it's necessary to engage with your adversaries, but you don't have to include them in a club that kind of allows everybody to have real dialogue, like there's actual listening going on. So at the same time that we're seeing like Canadian leadership with Trump, who also said, oh, we'd like you to be a 51st state. Like, okay, they're still having dialogue. It's not to the point that Trump did something so egregious that he shouldn't be there. Now, if we bombed Canada, that would be problematic, right? We should also be thrown out of the G7 or G8 at the time. So these are way different things. To be allowing somebody into the conversation that's doing something to that magnitude, I think it's different. Having a conversation and all the world leaders coming to the table, hopefully that's what they're doing anyway. But being at these summits where we're gathering and sharing ideas to talk about the betterment of the world when you're busy taking over territories, killing people, committing war crimes, I don't think it's the time or the place to be there. So that was a step and an action taken. I don't think it should be reversed. But I also think people, all leaders, Republicans and Democrats in the U.S. specifically, should figure out better ways to deal and engage with Russia, because both obviously didn't work.
Trump, by the way, left the summit early to return to the U.S. Because he wanted to be present in the Situation Room to more directly address the Israel-Iran issue, which goes to show that the problems right now in the Middle East are distracting from the Russia-Ukraine war and vice versa. There's a lot going on, a lot to handle. It's a very dangerous, scary situation.
Next up on Rising, Senator Mike Lee is facing backlash for a tweet about the deadly shooting of 2 Minnesota lawmakers and their spouses.
condemned what Mike Lee did here at home, and I will speak to him about this when I return. And what I'm going to tell him is, this isn't funny what happened here. This was an incredible woman, her husband, her 2 kids yesterday on Father's Day. There was no Father's Day for them. They lost both their parents.
That was Minnesota Democratic Senator Amy Klobuchar blasting Utah Republican Senator Mike Lee for his social media post after the murder of a Minnesota Democratic lawmaker and her husband last Saturday.
Mike Lee posted on X, "This is what happens when Marxists don't get their way," referring to the murders. Lee followed up with another X post of the masked man's photo alongside a headshot of Vance Bolter, the 57-year-old suspect, writing, "Nightmare on Waltz Street," a reference to the governor, Tim Walz.
Lee's official government X account, however, struck a much more serious tone. He tweeted on June 15th, quote, "These hateful attacks have no place in Utah, Minnesota, or anywhere in America. Please join me in condemning this senseless violence and praying for the victims and their families." Other Democrats also disavowed these comments. Senate Minority Whip Dick Durbin said they were beyond dangerous and absolutely unacceptable. Senator Patty Murray said they were completely, quote, "unhinged and abhorrent and divorced from reality."
Donald Trump Jr. joined News Nation yesterday to discuss the Minnesota shooting and rhetoric in politics. Take a look.
Everyone talks about Minnesota, but they don't talk about the guy seems to be a leftist. It's a Minnesota politician, or guy who was appointed by the Democrat governor, vice presidential candidate for the Democrat Party, Tim Walz. The guy that committed those atrocities this weekend is a Democrat that worked for Tim Walz, that had the flyers about the No Kings thing in there.
Now, I'm not sure about that, by the way, from what I've seen. I think he voted for your dad and things like that, from what I've seen.
I'll believe that when I see it.
The suspect in the Minnesota shooting currently faces federal murder charges that could allow for the death penalty. Prosecutors say he tried to attack 2 other officials and had a list with around 70 potential targets. The targets did include political figures and Planned Parenthood centers. Don Jr. needs to update his information.
Well, I think he was doing that on purpose to try to find a way to kind of blame this on a party, which I think is the wrong way to go for both parties, to try to figure out which party is most aligned with a criminal and a killer, right? That is not good. So I think that is something that should be corrected. But also with Mike Lee, the grandstanding is insane. To look at the tweet you send from your official, or X post that you send from your official account versus what you're saying personally, you are in a position where you're governing. Governance is important. And so even personally, you have to take into account that people are looking to you for guidance and leadership, especially during tragedy. And I just feel like the fact that he sent 2 different messages out within hours apart from one another just shows where or why people don't trust politicians.
Yeah, I don't think, in response to what Klobuchar said there, I don't think it was like I don't think it's a situation that he said like a joke that it was inappropriate. It wasn't really a joke. It was an accusation that Walz or Democrats are responsible or are Marxists. But again, this individual, we should wait to find out more information about why he did this. It could have been a personal grudge. The fact that he had lists of other political figures suggests to me it was not. His neighbor said that he's a Trump supporter who watches like InfoWars and Alex Jones, that he's a right-wing person. That could be false. We could learn new information that paints that in a new light. To me, and it sounds like to you, it doesn't really matter either way. I don't think Trump or Alex Jones is responsible for their speech affects things. But people like Mike Lee and Don Jr. should not jump to blaming Democrats for this when the Democrats are going to jump to blaming Republicans for this because he is a Republican, as far as we know. But also, you shouldn't do it either way, but you shouldn't do that and also then be totally wrong about the facts. So. And
also, for context, in Minnesota, voters don't have to publicly declare, like in other states, what party they're in, like when they're registering for a license and whatnot. So technically, according to all reports that I read on Bolton's actual registration, he's an unaffiliated voter. And so that's the facts that we know. And his best friend told us that he watched Trump and followed Trump closely. And so that's the information we have that needs to be vetted by the proper people to do so, law enforcement. And so we have to go with, people are like, why is there not more information? Why is the manifesto not released? Sometimes these things happen quickly. Sometimes they take a long time. Maybe there's a lot of convoluted information within the manifesto that he had in his car. But I think that that's also important. But the rush to try to blame someone for violence, to me, whether it's in Boulder, Colorado, or whether it's here, is wildly inappropriate because we're always forgetting that there's families that are suffering from these losses. And the way that we use social media to just kind of make blanket statements and blame somebody is not helpful when you know there are actually people that are grieving because of this violence, political or not. It's all wrong. But when you attach it to a philosophy that doesn't necessarily have to do with the leader, has to do with the overall thinking that you're right and they're wrong and solve it with violence, that should be just condemned across the board and not trying to point to who ignited that thought in their head.
Sure. I used to really like Mike Lee, and I still agree with some of his policies. I think he has some interesting political ideas in the limited government camp. However, he tweets like he's a different person. He tweets like he's, you know, a right-wing online kind of media influencer type person. And it's just, if that's what you want to do, fine, but you're a senator. You could behave like a senator. I wish more people in our Congress, in both parties, took their jobs more seriously.
I wish I had some pearls to clutch.
What?
You don't like when leaders like the president tweet and say things recklessly online? You want them to behave like real leaders?
I want them to do their jobs, which is consider legislation. And it seems like they would rather be media figures or influencers or online people. And it's like, please do your job. We might be going to war right now. Are you going to exercise any oversight over that, please? You spend a lot of time tweeting. There's some actual policy going on. Can you focus on that? That would be my... especially for our lawmakers who do next to nothing. At least say what you will about Trump. He's tweeting all the time, but he's also making policy because Congress isn't doing anything. Congress just tweets and goes on TV. They don't do anything. It annoys me.
Fair.
The New York Times is baffled that by New York voters, the New York Times has confused New York voters, confused what I'm saying, by issuing a rare kind of anti-endorsement in the New York City mayor race. We'll discuss it coming up on Rising Next. What does Trump like to call it? The failing New York Times? Well, they failed in one big way this week by seemingly breaking their own promise to not throw their weight behind a candidate in the city's mayoral elections.
While the editorial board did not give a formal endorsement, they did urge voters to keep Democratic Socialist candidate Zohran Mamdani off the ballot. In an article published Tuesday, the board said, quote, Mr. Mamdani, a charismatic 33-year-old, is running a joyful campaign full of viral videos in which he talks with voters. Unfortunately, Mr. Mamdani is running on an agenda uniquely unsuited to the city's challenges. He is a democratic socialist who too often ignores the unavoidable trade-offs of governance. The article also pointed out Mamdani's inexperience in running local government. Former Governor Andrew Cuomo and Mamdani's fellow frontrunner agreed on X, posting, quote, "Experience matters. This is not the time to learn on the job."
Many people, including this guy, took the Times anti-endorsement of Mamdani as a tacit endorsement of Cuomo, the same man that just 4 years ago, that same editorial board urged to resign in disgrace. Democratic activist Armand Damaluski, one of the many showing their frustration with the Times on X, writes, quote, "As much as I loathe Cuomo, I would have respected the NYT board a lot more for just openly endorsing him than this weird passive-aggressive implicit endorsement without endorsement thing that they are doing." And Semaphore editor-in-chief Ben Smith took aim at the editorial board itself in its rambling non-endorsement, saying, "Death throes of unsigned New York Times editorials are getting quite odd," adding, "I think if you read this 3 or 4 times, it's fair to say the Times endorsed Andrew Cuomo, but in the most confusing possible way." And yeah, if viewers are going, is it really that bad? I encourage everyone to actually read this editorial, which is a mess. So the situation is in New York City's mayoral race, it's ranked choice voting, so you can rank up to 5 people, order of preference, and so it's possible that someone who's not leading in the polls right now could win the election. If nobody, gets enough of the vote, then it goes to your next choice and your next choice. That's possible that can happen. So the ranking order matters. And what they effectively said is, so they criticized Cuomo because, again, he has serial sexual misconduct, resigned in disgrace, nursing home scandal, lied about it, covered up. We all know the story. I don't see how you could possibly. They called on him to resign from office, and they're saying, they didn't say, do not vote for Cuomo. They said, do not vote for Mamdani. And,
his own
and they said, and don't leave off both of them, because if you leave off both of them, they said, well, that's like voting third party in the presidential election. God forbid we do that. There are other candidates, right? They could have just said, we don't like Mamdani, we don't like Cuomo. Here's the couple that we do like. You can rank those. They specifically said, don't rank Mamdani, and if you don't rank Cuomo, that's like voting for neither of them. So they basically said you should rank. Again, reading between the lines, they said you should not rank Mamdani at all, and you should rank Cuomo somewhere. It was cowardly what they did. It was just gross and wrong and bad. I don't even like Mamdani's politics. I would not vote. I mean, I would look at I would not vote for Cuomo or Mamdani. I would rank the other candidates, but that they're telling me explicitly I'm not supposed to do that. I mean, where do you get off, New York Times? It's insane. It was an insane, cowardly op-ed editorial from the New York Times that implicitly, in the most backhanded, mealy-mouthed, cowardly way, does endorse Andrew Cuomo.
So yesterday you yelled out in the office when this Times report or came down, and I was
had
like,
a high-pitched gasp.
Yes, it was I can't believe, and I was like, oh, it can't be that bad. Let me take a look at it, and I read it, and it's really, you're describing it pretty accurately on the nose. I was actually so surprised by this because I think the New York Times anti-Mamdani stance really misses the moment of everything that the Democratic Party has been calling for, which is change. Just to base that in facts and research, in 2024, the Pew Research study found that 63% of Democrats under 40 wanted to move in a more progressive direction, which is what the New York Times is essentially saying that Mamdani does with no plan. The polling is consistent with the thoughts of most Americans that are really looking forward to something new. You don't have to align with AOC specifically, understanding that across the country there are going to be a ton of new Democrats that we should welcome in, that people should welcome into the party and say, listen, these new ideas are just fresh and something different, non-establishment, that will help create whatever this new iteration in midterms is. So to have the board and an outlet that arguably a lot of young people do not relate to and don't find themselves or see themselves in any way, and have the editorial board so adamantly just kind of dismiss someone because of their age and inexperience, knowing that even some leaders who people think were effective and amazing, like Barack Obama, quote unquote, was inexperienced at the time and could have been argued to be ineffective compared to a Hillary Clinton or whoever was first named in the conversation with him before he actually put his name in the hat.
Andrew Cuomo has experience. He has experience allegedly harassing women sexually and covering up how many people died in nursing homes under his disastrous COVID policy. So experience is not always a good thing.
Right. It seems like there was a conversation had about keeping bureaucratic regimes in place, and that somebody is like, listen, we need to talk to Cuomo because he's the establishment candidate. It's kind of like the same thing, because I've been very adamantly against the fact that Joe Biden was pushed down people's throats when there was a conversation about how he got here. Obviously, Bernie Sanders, to most people in my world and that I was hearing from, were very enthused by Bernie Sanders. So it's not about age, it's about new ideas and that leadership that makes people want to follow you. And so I think the Democrats are making a huge mistake by trying to make people accept a candidate again. That's literally what happened over the last 8 to 10 years, because it's like we need to follow who was up next, stay in line, stay in order. And that is not working. Not only did the party lose a ton of the working class and blue collar Americans that they want, they lost a lot of the young vote. These are people that you just saw in polls and on TikTok, and very obviously with your eyes, men are going a different way. And so it's just time to try something different. So I think the New York Times completely missed the mark and are not actually listening to what people, including their readers who do still read the New York Times, have to say about what they want to see in the Democratic Party in the next few years.
Yeah, I'm honestly a little surprised that the New York Times, maybe I shouldn't be surprised, the New York Times woke up and chose violence with the left in general. It was like, let's make every left person as mad as possible. I mean, deservedly mad. I kind of think it's funny when the left gets mad, but if I was the left, I would also be mad about this. I'm kind of mad about it, and I'm not even on the left.
But they also
it was really ridiculous.
They also claim that no one inspires, but then they also complimented Mamdani. They said that he is, what did they say? Yeah. They called him, like engaging, and that's inspiring. That's literally like the slogan is the campaign strategy before people get to the policy. The person, why people voted for Trump was because what he represents, a businessman versus actually proving to have the business record in politics and in governance. So this is what I'm saying. Like, I don't think that they are actually, like you said, you're shooting the rock and then hiding your hand, throwing the rock. That was just a crazy way to line this up, especially when the Times has condemned Cuomo in the way that it has in the past. And especially when most New Yorkers have a very strong reaction to Cuomo even jumping back into this race.
And again, there are other candidates. It's not a binary choice.
There's
a lot of other people. You can just say, we didn't like either of them. Remember, for president in 2020, their endorsement editorial for the Democratic primary in 2020, I believe they endorsed Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren. They did a dual endorsement of those two people. I mean, maybe they're just trying to be weird. Settle down, guys. No one cares anyway. It doesn't matter at all. Maybe it matters what the New York Times has to say about the New York City.
Well, just know that progress requires some risk. And so you're going to have to take a risk on something different, even if you don't love every single thing about it.
Nothing ventured, nothing gained. Up next on Rising, the Trump family's newest business venture is a mobile phone company, and we will share our thoughts. Trump Organization has announced Trump Mobile, a monthly mobile phone service priced at $47.45, an apparent nod to Donald Trump's first and second term. The network will offer 5G service through the 47 plan.
The Trump Mobile website calls the plan, quote, all American performance at a, quote, everyday price, like Walmart. Trump Mobile is also set to launch a mobile phone, T1 phone with an Android operating system. The phone is selling for pre-order at almost $500 and will be available in September.
The service offers unlimited talk, text, and data, international calls to 100 destinations, roadside assistance, and telehealth services, including virtual medical care and ordering, plus delivery for prescription medications. President Trump's son and executive vice president of the Trump Organization, Eric Trump, said in a statement on Monday, "I'm incredibly excited to step into this new digital space. Hardworking Americans deserve a wireless service that's affordable, reflects their values, and delivers reliable quality they can count on. We're especially proud to offer free long-distance calling to our military members and their families because those serving overseas should always be able to stay connected to the people they love back home."
But some are aghast at the new business venture. Brian Krasenstein wrote on X, breaking, Trump is mad at Tim Cook and Apple for not destroying their company by moving everything to America, so he has decided to grift some more by selling phones via a new company, Trump Mobile, to his gullible followers. Journalist Chuck Todd posted, wonder if Fox personalities are getting a discount for signing up. Some of these folks have sailed past, quote, embarrassing years ago. And Jessica Tarlov of The Five on Fox News wrote, another week, another Trump grift.
Well, I'm not getting anything to promote the Trump phone, and I'm not promoting it. I was just giving information about it. Who cares?
No, we're not going to slide
Well,
past
you can
this.
sell a. He's a business. The family it's a business. They can sell a phone. I don't care.
Grifter in chief is back at it again. He's using his presidency to just grift. He's even using the 47, 45 to just grift. And the thing is, like,
those numbers are not trademarked.
I know people are so loyal to him, as we understand that they blindly took words that he said to go storm the Capitol, even though we're not connecting that dot. We're just saying that they were inspired to think that this presidency was so rigged that they needed to do those crazy acts. So they will buy everything from his steaks to his sneakers to Trump University, which he got sued for because it was a scam, a grift, to his NFTs, spend their last dime to go to dinner with him. He is selling the presidency and access to the presidency, and really
he's selling his name.
No, he's selling he's in a political position right now. Nobody wants to figure out all the ways that he can sell. No, he's doing it while he's president, and even leaning in even more. The sneakers came about while he was on the campaign trail. The watch came about while he was on the campaign trail. Why are you taking off your glasses? Tell me why you're taking it. It's not silly. This joke writes itself. Come on, you feel uncomfortable with Palantir and all the information and data that Trump has suggested and Doge has suggested that they collect on everyday Americans. Now you're telling me that people who follow Trump blindly should give away their information and get a cell phone that's going to, like all cell phones do, collect your data and use your information. In what way? Okay, this is all seems like convoluted grifting and making me uncomfortable. You shouldn't want it either. You should not want the president and the government to have access to your cell phone. As a libertarian, that should not be something. You're not going to buy it, but say people who are libertarians that like him buy it. Now the president and his company has access to all your information on top of whatever Palantir is gathering about you to provide to whatever Palantir is providing it with.
That's the inevitable result. I have this is Verizon. And it's an iPhone, so it has the Apple App Store. They probably have all my data. It's kind of unavoidable at this point.
But you're president. You want your.
If you want the Trump phone, it is not my job to stand in your way. I don't know if it's a grift when it's not. You're not being tricked. You know what it is. You know what the product is, and you want that. You can make choices for your own decision. I leave to individual consumers decisions about how to spend their money. If you want to spend it on a Trump steak, or a Trump University degree, or a Trump whatever, or a gold-plated Trump, license plate for your Trump mobile, I don't care. It's fine. That's your business, not mine.
Look, Trump Mobile is not about tech, okay? Donald Trump Jr. doesn't care about making us so tech-savvy in 2025 that we change the world. It's about being a MAGA ATM. It's about the fact that people buy products because they feel like aligning themselves with Trump is an act of patriotism, and he's leaning on the hearts and heartstrings of the people that support him to continue to pay into his piggy bank. You remember that he raised over $250 million from these same people during the 2020 election. No, it's his fault that he's not just using his presidency to actually lead okay, and govern over the people. And he can do this when he leaves office. Right now, we don't need another sneaker
This
or
isn't
some way
even
for you
him.
to make money.
This is his
He has so much-
family.
no, it's connected. It's his business.
Well, it's connected, but it's not like distracting him from.
So also, all the business deals, all the Trump international hotels that are being built in the Middle East is not him. It's his family. No, everybody's tired of hearing this. Everybody who can see through the scam is saying this is not appropriate. Why don't you just take a break and wait and stop trying to
How's
find
it a
ways
scam? It's
to
exactly
take.
what it is.
Everyday
It's a
Americans are
Trump-branded
so
cell phone.
No, everyday Americans are disillusioned by what they thought they were getting, and they're going to realize down the line. I feel sad for the people that are still buying into every single thing when they realize, oh wait, you're probably going to get fired next, if not by Doge, by something else that gets cut. Your Medicaid is about to go away, but you're spending your last dime on these new sneakers and this $45 cell phone. These people are going to be in for a rude awakening, and I just feel bad for anybody that's taken advantage of. Even if they make the choice on their own, I don't think that is appropriate. Yes, because they are love and patriotism. Yeah, you should feel bad about that. You should feel bad that people are getting taken advantage of, because some people like him so much that they would spend their last dime to support him, and then they're going to realize that they have no money. They're going to realize they have no money.
I don't think there's that many people who. I mean,
you don't think there's 70 million people
in a perilous situation?
There's 70 million people that use Medicaid. I believe that number is accurate. So, yeah, a lot of people still will buy the phone because they can afford $45.
Well, okay, but they're not going bankrupt for buying too many phones. Like, it's like a gambling addiction. You have too many. I'm imagining someone whose home is just filled with like the Trump bear or the Trump like, I have no more money for food because I brought too many Trump products. Like, what is it? That doesn't exist.
The same person that you're supporting.
And I wouldn't feel that sorry for that person if they did do that.
Your Medicaid. That's what I'm saying. You're going to realize, just like the people, I've interviewed people that literally lost their job, and like the same person I voted for is the same person that put Elon Musk in position to make me get fired as a government employee. They can't believe it.
Well,
so slowly this is going to continue to happen.
Outside their narrow self-interest about what's good for the country. That
don't work. Don't worry about it.
No, they should. You work in the private sector. Do something that is socially beneficial, that is enriching to you and the private sector. The free exchange. You're disparaging the marketplace, the free exchange. I have money that I've earned, and I want this product, and I'm exchanging it. And you're praising government work, which is compulsory money being taken from the taxpayers to give to someone.
No, they thought they were effective in government work, and they're not like sacrificial lambs that just give up their job for the betterment of the country. These people actually still wanted to work, and they're disillusioned by what happened.
But no one wants to pay them.
Yeah, no one wants to pay for a phone either to bring this full circle.
But they do. That's what I'm saying. They do. People do want to pay for this. They don't want to pay for this. You want to force them, and you want to stop them from paying this, which they do want.
I just want our president to lead, like you said earlier. Up next, Bill Maher slams actor Sean Penn for meeting with Fidel Castro and Hugo Chavez, but not President Trump.
Bill Maher calling out actor Sean Penn's seeming penchant for dictators. The Oscar winner had criticized the comedian for dining with President Trump. Maher pushed back, noting that was hypocritical. Let's watch.
Really? You'll meet with
I don't think that I
Castro
would-
and Hugo Chavez, but not the President of the United States?
Yeah, I saw good results come out of some of those things in terms of
You do realize
agendas
the
that I had. I don't think that there's anything that I would. I just personally
know.
wouldn't trust anything that was said in the room.
In the early 2000s, Penn met with late Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez and also with communist Cuban leaders Fidel Castro and Raul Castro. Maher defended breaking bread with Trump. Watch.
I'm telling you, there's a very different guy behind closed doors in a different setting. Would you go to the dinner? I think you're crazy not to. Not to want to see up close the person who's this important in everybody's lives for the last decade.
You know, I completely understand that.
Two, are you going to lie about it? I'm sorry, I'm not a liar. I don't lie, so I told the truth. And then three, do I go back to doing what I always did? Yes, I did.
Reactions are pouring in. Dinesh D'Souza posted on X, quote, Bill Maher versus Sean Penn in The Kingdom of the Blind, The One-Eyed Man is King. Daniel DiMartino wrote, quote, Sean Penn is a disgrace. We all remember you hanging out with your pal, Hugo Chavez. Sean Penn, wonderful actor. He looked terrible there, by the way. Can I say, I don't know.
I don't want to comment on that man's
appearance. It did not look good. I just looked unhealthy or something. I don't mean to be rude to him. I think he's a great actor. I think he has terrible political judgment and has been used as a useful idiot by communist dictators. And Bill Maher was 1,000% correct to point out, you have some problem with me having dinner with Trump, but you met with Chavez and Castro and then sung their praises. And then like, oh, but, you know, as dissidents are being hailed off to jail, oh, but look how clean the street is or whatever. You know, they're showing you the one street where it looks nice. It's some right-wing people have started doing this with Russia's government as well. It's very annoying. They're don't go on orchestrated tours by the authoritarian government. You know, North Korea or China or whoever it is, they're going to take you and they're going to show you the nice part of town. Not going to show you the the camps where they keep dissidents.
Like don't interview. In a sit-down one-on-one so he can give you propaganda like that. Yeah.
Well, no, the interview was fine.
Okay.
Just like the Bill Maher meeting with Trump is fine, and just like having meeting with Chavez, the meeting is fine. You should just be cognizant of what you're being shown when you're on the little tour about how great the country is.
Right.
That's my view.
You know, the message is fine. Like if you go sit down with somebody who you've criticized heavily on your very successful and popular show and you've criticized them to no end and then sit down and, oh, they were nice behind closed doors, totally different. And that's your feedback and talking about how great it was. There is room for criticism. People should be able to say, hey, Bill Maher, what's up? You know, why did you decide to take that meeting with somebody who you said all these things about? I think the messenger was just wrong, right? That's not the right person to come from who sat down with people and can have the same conversation thrown right back at him. But I think with Bill Maher, he made an important point there is that he said he hadn't stopped criticizing Trump afterwards. Now, if he changed his tone and got on air and was very much like, oh, no, this is great, you know, you have to keep consistent. Like he's a comedian, but, you know, even in review and taking some of those journalistic tactics on to ask questions, to challenge, you know, that's still important to do. And so he hasn't really stopped doing that as I watch his show. He seems very balanced in his thoughts. Sometimes he angers one side, sometimes he angers the other side. But that's exactly, if you're providing perspective, what you should do, right? You shouldn't just blindly be allegiant to one party, one person, or one thing. So I actually applaud the conversation and the meeting. I don't think anything was wrong with it. But I do think that your audience is going to naturally want you to explain why, especially Bill Maher is not the exact example, but some other people have met with President Trump that have been even more aggressive in their stance against President Trump. And that confuses people, right? That confuses people when you have leaders like Eric Adams, who has been vehemently against President Trump and then sits down when it comes to a pardon. It's like, what's he doing
Eric Adams
for you?
is cosplaying as a Republican because he wants a pardon. And
exactly.
And now he can't possibly get elected except without Republican support. And there's not enough of it in New York City, so it's not going to happen.
So, but it's happened so much across the board that naturally voters and people who watch television are going to criticize and have their eyebrow raised when it's like, well, why are you now cozying up to President Trump? Is it because you just know that he was going to be president? Is it because you know that post this you want to work with him? Like, what's the reason outside of genuine curiosity? And I think that is a natural question to ask somebody who's been so critical and vocal about him.
Bill Maher, like myself, like many Americans, just has mixed feelings about Trump. Likes some of the things he does and says and dislikes other things that he does and says, or thinks that he could go a little bit less hard on this policy and a little bit harder on this one, or that, I think the tariffs are totally bad. I think deporting violent criminals is great, and mass deportation of, workers who aren't harming anyone else is a bad idea. I think DOJ was a good initiative. I think it should have been approved by Congress. It's a mixed bag. It's honestly a mixed bag. It's complicated. People who love Trump, there's millions of them, but overall, it's not everybody. People who have absolute Trump derangement syndrome and despise every single thing he does and would never give him credit for success in the foreign policy realm, where I've argued he's been most successful. That's millions of people too, but it's not everybody. And then there's a lot of us who just have mixed feelings about him and want the best for our country and want him to listen to good impulses and then be a little bit more restrained on social media maybe, and then he would be a very effective president.
I'm not mad at ever breaking the echo chamber, right? I don't think people should sit inside of their silos of people that agree with them, because you can find anything to back up any information that you're looking for. So I agree that he should have met with him, but I also agree that all those people that blindly do love Trump that you mentioned, they're probably buying that phone and they shouldn't do that.
Oh my God, not the
they
phone.
Should not buy the mobile
Enough
phone.
of the phone. I don't want to hear about the phone anymore. That does it for us on Rising Live. Please look out for more exclusive YouTube content coming your way today. You can be sure to like, share, and subscribe to The Hill's YouTube channel so you never miss any of our content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're now available anywhere you can listen to podcasts. It is only Tuesday, so we will be back with you tomorrow, Wednesday, for another excellent edition of Rising. We will see you then.